finishing up Good News, people. And if you've been around, my dad usually does this really, really long recaps. Where about halfway through, he goes, and I told you all that to tell you about this sermon. And what that taught you guys was how my life was growing up. Anything that he would teach me would be about an hour and a half, and I'd be like, this is a really good lesson. And he'd be like, anyways, I told you all that to tell you this. And you're like, oh, we haven't got to the lesson part. But I have learned a lot today. So I'm not going to do that to you guys. Hopefully you've been around, and if not, you can always check them out on our website and all that. But today we're going to be finishing it all out, this Lent type season, because next week is Palm Sunday, which is going to be wonderful. And then the week after that's going to be Easter, so we're all going to be celebrating. So it's just a wonderful time right now. And so let's finish this out. Let's talk about some stuff. Let's read through the Bible a little bit. And then let's break that down. And then let's relate it back to you so that we can go out into the world and change it. So I'm going to read some. I'm not the best at reading, so bear with me. I'm reading out of Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. So if you have a Bible, you can turn to that. Or if you're new school, you can turn it on. You can close your Candy Crush app, and we can read together. So mine's out of the Message version, so it might be a little bit different. But this is what it says. It's titled, He Took on the Status of a Slave. If you've gotten anything at all out of following Christ, if his love has made any difference in your life, if being a community of the Spirit means anything to you, if you have a heart, if you care, then do me a favor, agree with each other, love each other, be deep-spirited friends. Don't push your way to the front. Don't sweet talk your way to the top. Put yourself aside and help others get ahead. Don't be obsessed with getting your own advantage. Forget yourselves. Long enough to lend a helping hand. Think of yourselves the way Christ Jesus thought of himself. He had equal status with God, but didn't think so much of himself that he had to cling to the advantages of that deity and take on the status of a slave. Became human. Having become human, he stayed human. It was an incredibly humbling process. He didn't claim special privileges. Instead, he lived a selfless, obedient life and then died a selfless, obedient death, and the worst kind of death at that, a crucifixion. Because of the obedience, God lifted him high and honored him far beyond any or anything ever. So that all created beings in heaven and on earth, even those long ago dead and buried, will bow and worship before him, Jesus Christ, and call out in praise that he is the master of all in the glorious honor of God the Father. So let's break this down a little bit. First of all, the church of Philippi. It was one of Paul's first churches that he planted. You can read about it in Acts chapter 16. And it wasn't easy. They were very proud of who they were with the Romans. And so you have Paul showing up being like, actually, all those gods that you say are God and king and all that's just not true. There's this guy Jesus and he's king and all that. So they didn't really like that. So they pretty much beat him up and threw him out of town. And, but he got some hearts changed and people started to follow him a little bit. So later in life, we find Paul where we mainly find Paul at all times in jail. And he's writing to the church of Philippi because they actually had sent him some goodies, like a little care package type thing to help out with while he was going through this. And he starts to write this letter to them. And it's something truly beautiful if you've never read it. It's really short. It's only like 4 chapters or something like that. So I would challenge you to go read it. And in each of the sections, he's really just kind of painting a picture of what it's like to be a Christian, what it's like to follow Jesus. And while he's in jail, he even writes at this point because he doesn't know if he's actually going to get out of jail or if he's going to die. And he starts to write in one of these vignettes, essentially, that to die would almost be the easier way out because then he would just get to go be with Jesus. But to be a true Christian would be to continue to travel throughout the world and teach what he has learned from him. And then right in the middle of all this, in chapter 2, he writes a poem. And this poem is something beautiful. It's what we just read through. It's something truly wonderful to read. And some people think that maybe he copied some early Christian writers. They don't really know if he wrote his own poem. But what they do agree is it is a poem. And it paints this picture that Jesus has changed each and every one of our lives. And that we are a part of something so much bigger than we could ever understand. And then it starts to explain that, Jesus, he was on the same level as a God, but when he came to earth, instead of using those advantages, he gave them all up. And he lived a normal life. He took on the status of a slave. It wasn't like he used any advantages. He just lived a normal life and showed people that you can continue to live a good life no matter who you are. And he took it as far as to live a selfless and obedient life and then take a selfless and obedient death. And then he got crucified, which I know sometimes we just kind of toss that out there. But whenever I read that, I try to think of what that actually means. It doesn't mean that like one day this dude just like died and then 3 days later he like woke up and we're like, cool, we did it or whatever. No, like this dude was beat for hours, bled everywhere. And then they made him carry a cross. And then they nailed him to that cross and they hung him up there. And he continued to bleed and was in agony and couldn't breathe. He did that for you and me. Now, I don't know many people that would do that for anybody. Not even the people that they love the most. And he did it for anyone and everyone. And he didn't have to, like I said. He was on the same level as God. But he gave all that up so that me and you could live a fulfilling life. Now, Jesus would give up all that status and live a good life to die for our sins. And I would venture to say that's why most of us are in this room right now. Some of us have felt a certain way. We have felt lost, but we came back. But sometimes it's really good to feel that feeling. But then we get into a room and then we get up here and we teach you something. And what I run into a lot, especially with teens and new believers, is, but now it's our turn to do something. It's our turn to start changing the world. It's our turn to start acting right. And when we think about it, though, we're like, well, that was Jesus, though. That was the Son of God. I'm not the Son of God. I'm just a regular man. I'm going to mess up. And let me be the first person to tell you, I get it. I do. I get it on a deep level. As I explained, I'm involved in a lot of ministry. I help a lot of people. And let me tell you, it is not easy in any way, shape, or form. Sometimes it feels rewarding. Sometimes there is perks to it. But sometimes there is a lot of stuff that go unnoticed. What I mean is, I told you all my credentials earlier, right? Like, I work 4 different youth groups and I help out with all kinds of young adults and blah, blah, blah. But like, that doesn't explain like all the planning that goes into it. It doesn't take into consideration all the driving I have to do. It doesn't take into consideration all the contacting I have to do. It doesn't take into consideration all the pouring out into my leaders so that they feel confident enough to go out into the world. Now, people don't see that, which is fine. I didn't get into this for glory. I got into this because my life was changed, so I want everybody else to. So when it's time to be a good person, I can totally see where you don't want to step up. I get it. There's plenty of times it feels like you are helping out everyone in the whole world and no one's helping you out. Sometimes it feels like you've put in all the work and somebody else is getting all the praise. I also see how messed up the world is. I see how hard it is to stop being in this survival mode. I mean, shoot, get on Facebook for 5 seconds, post something controversial, and just watch your comment section. It's a survival mode. We're all in this constant fear that we're going to get everything taken from us or we're not going to be friends with people anymore. And what I started to feel like is I felt that way before, but I needed to stop. So One thing that I have a problem with people, though, is when I tell you to stop doing something, I mean to like stop doing it, not to slow down. One thing I talk to people all the time about social media and everything is I'm like, hey, you should probably stop arguing with people. Hey, you should probably stop being in comment sections. You should probably stop posting things like that. You should probably stop talking to people like that. You should probably treat people better. And people always say like, I stopped. And I was like, did you stop though? I was like, well, I slowed down. Why did I say to slow down? What? So one time I read this book, and this guy's telling a story about how he's in this small town. So like everybody knows each other, right? It's like one of them towns where there's like 900 people. So everybody like went to high school together and all that. And he's talking about how he's coming up to a 4-way stop. And he looks left. He looks right. No one's coming. So he doesn't completely stop at the stop sign. He slows down. And then he goes through the stop sign. And then 5 seconds later, police sirens go off. So they pull him over, right? And he knows the police officer. They went to like high school together or whatever. So he's like, hey, man, why don't you stop at that stop sign? And he's like, well, I didn't have to because there was no one coming, so I slowed down. And he's like, yo, it's not a slow down sign, it's a stop sign. And he's like, yeah, but there was no one coming, so I slowed down. He's like, but it's not a slow down sign, it's a stop sign. They go back and forth. So finally his buddy starts grabbing him, and he starts like shaking him and hitting him and everything. And this guy's like, hey, stop. And he's like, do you want me to stop or you want me to slow it down? That's what I mean. You know what I mean? When you're being mean, it's easy for you to be like, I slowed down, chilled out. Yeah, but as soon as you're on the receiving end, you're like, I just wish everybody would stop. And you're like, do you wish they would stop or slow down? So we need to stop. We need to start loving one another and caring for one another. Now, what I mean is I get these scriptures way in advance. And sometimes I read them, and I'm going to be real, they don't mean anything to me at the time. Some type of life, whatever life I'm in, you know, whatever's going through my, like what I'm living through or whatever, it just doesn't really mean anything to me. Sometimes I do research. Sometimes I do whatever, and they don't really mean anything to me. And then like all of a sudden something will happen, and I'll be like, it all makes sense now. And I apologize for not believing in it before. So these scriptures, specifically 1 through 4, mean way more to me now than they ever did before. So what I mean is a week ago, well, on Tuesday, I had my interview to get my credentials. I've been serving in ministry for like 6 years now. And I finally submitted some paperwork so that I could like actually get some titles and stuff. Mainly because they wanted me to, not because I wanted to or anything. Because I don't really care about stuff like that. But I didn't know what to expect, right? Because they're like, it's an interview. And everyone's acting like they're going to like grill me. And they're going to be like, when you were in 3rd grade, like what happened? And I'll be like, I don't know. Like, I don't even remember what I had for breakfast this morning. Like, there ain't no way I'm going to remember what happened in 3rd grade. So I was like, I'll just go with the flow. I'll live my life. I'll be me. And you've seen what me looks like now for about 15 minutes. So I was like, here we go. So I get into this interview, and it was already awkward because there's 5 people, and 2 of the guys I already work for. I run their youth programs. And then 2 of the other guys, I've offered to work for them. So it was kind of like, what don't you guys know about me? So they asked me, tell us your story and tell us how you got into ministry. So I told my story. I hated church. I hated God. I saw what it did to my mom and dad. I didn't want to be a part of this. I was spiteful. And then when I was 17, something happened in the back of a chapel that would forever change my life. And I just gave it to him straight. My life changed when I was 17. By 18, I was running my own youth program. By 19, I was serving in the National Guard as a chaplain's assistant. By 21, I was deployed. By 22, I was coming home and I was running multiple youth programs. Now I'm 24 and I help out with all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I feel like I've been called to ministry. Then they started to ask me, why was there such a drastic change? And I sat there for a minute and I thought about it. What was this drastic change? What was this big snap? What broke? How could I be so angry one day and then not be able to contain sharing this the next? I started to explain when I was in the back of that chapel. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I got hugged. Like I was accepted home. Like this overwhelming sense of love, grace, peace, compassion, pure joy was inside of me. And when I got home, after feeling that, I wanted anyone and everyone to feel the same exact way. And there was nothing I was not going to do in order to make sure people didn't feel that. Now, trust me, my ministry time hasn't been all rainbows and butterflies. It's been on the sides of roads looking at my car. It's been paying for gas, and it's like, ooh. It's been wondering if my bank account's gonna, allow me to pay for things. There's been pain. There's been loss. There's been getting passed up. There's been getting left behind. And there's been so much more. But there's nothing I wouldn't do to not share this with everyone. I mean, you heard my schedule. I work a lot. And because of that, in my interview, they started to teach me that I need to start saying no. I thought they were going to grill me for like 30 minutes. And I would say about 10 to 15 minutes of it was me learning to say no to people. Because they could see something in me that I was going to give it all up in order to tell people about this. That there was nothing that was ever going to stop me from pushing forward. Because ultimately, I'm in this thing till the wheels come off. I'm going till my legs give out. Until I can't go no more, I'm going to be sharing the love he gave me. And I don't understand anything else now. Now, in the Old Testament, one of the words they use for God is Yahweh. Some believe it is Yod, He, Vah, He, or Yahweh, right? Now, some believe they named him this because it was like breathing the Lord's Spirit in. Yod, He, Vah, He. So every time you breathe, it's like you're saying the Lord's name. Now, when you're born, what's the first thing you have to do? You have to breathe. You have to say the Lord's name. What's the last thing you have to do before you die? You have to say the Lord's name one last time. Now, I don't know about you, but until the last time I say the Lord's name, I'm going to be sharing all this. I'm not going to stop. I don't understand anything else anymore. I think it's something truly beautiful. Now, if you're in this room and you feel that way, and you know the feelings I'm talking about, don't you want to share these things with everyone you come in contact with? This pure joy that you felt, this love, this grace, this compassion, aren't these things that you want to show the whole world? It will be hard. And let me tell you, it will be from experience. But in scriptures 1 through 4, it teaches us that we're all just trying to do our best and that we're going to make through it together and that we have to put ourselves aside sometimes. But the beautiful part about scriptures 5 through 11 is it gives us a teacher. Now, when you showed up your first day of kindergarten, maybe you didn't know your ABCs, maybe you didn't know your 1 through 10s, but your teacher slowly taught you how to do it. And now you don't think twice about your ABCs or your 1, 2, 3s. That's how this is. At first, it's going to be awkward. At first, it's going to be weird. At first, it's going to be frustrating because you don't fully understand how to teach this or show it to people. But 1 through 4 is asking you to just try your best. And 5 through 11 is teaching you that there's a teacher out there that shows you how it's done. so we can do this together. And it will take some time, but eventually we'll get good at it together. So in conclusion, realize that Jesus gave up everything to show us we could live a good life. Realize that we have had these amazing feelings change our lives for the better each and every day. And realize this wasn't meant for us to hold on to. We were designed to share it with the whole world. That's all I have. I'm going to pray for you guys. And then these people are going to engage in some worship. I challenge you guys to do the same. You guys have been changed, right? You have these feelings inside of you. You feel amazing. So don't just stand up because it's the time to stand up. Don't just clap because other people are clapping. Don't just sing because there's words on the screen. Mean those things. Clap because you're celebrating. Raise your hands because you're reaching out to a God who loves you. Sing the songs because you actually believe in the words that are being sung. Celebrate this time. If you need to cry, cry. If you need to pray, pray. And if you're just like me and you've been ridiculed for the way you worship, for standing in the back with your hands in your pockets, I understand what you're going through. Because in those moments, it feels like God is pointing at a room full of people and saying, look, you are a part of something. And it is something truly beautiful. So bow your heads and close your eyes. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for everything you've given me. Thank you so much for all of these people. Thank you for changing my life. Thank you for making me the person I am today. And I can't wait to see the things that you have designed for this church and for the path they're going down and for all the amazing people that they are going to meet and create and become. I love you so, so much, Lord. And I thank you every day. In your name I pray. Amen.